Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to part 3 of that big C, consequences. Part 3 is about the illogical consequence, or another word for that is punishment. We've found out what a natural consequence is, which is as simple as walking outside in a thunderstorm and getting wet. It is the most powerful way that any of us learn is through natural consequences. A logical consequence, which was part 2, we learned that that is when an individual, a parent, an adult, and preferably with a child, intervenes and sits down in a calm, concise, and clear manner and brainstorms what the consequence should be of a specific action, a consequence that is directly relatable to the actual sequence of events. So a curfew would be a consequence of a curfew change. Screen time would follow a logical consequence of screen time fluctuation. So when we get into the state of illogical consequences, often those are made because of triggers that have been set off by certain behaviors. In part 1, I mentioned a child screaming uncontrollably, a teenager yelling uncontrollably. That obviously triggers in us. And what happens is we oftentimes, because our lives are so busy, do not have the time to sit down, calm ourselves down, and then have a clear, calm conversation with your child. Oftentimes, we get into a state of overwhelm and we just have to get this thing sorted out now. And while punishments or illogical consequences work in the short term, they never work in the long term. You cannot scare a child into doing the right thing or the better thing. It doesn't work that way. How many times have you said, oh, this is the 1,000th time that I've had to do X, Y, and Z, and it still doesn't work. My child is still doing X, Y, and Z. This is what our integrative coaching calls are all about, is firstly, allowing me to be a think partner so that we can come up with a pause before we jump into a punishment or an illogical consequence. We're creating responsible, independent children, young adults who are going to go out into the world with a solid thought and decision-making process. We need to build trust. Punishments do not build trust. What punishments do, just allow our children to trust in our illogical behavior. That sounds quite scary, doesn't it? So what I'd like to do is to pause here and to invite you, if you haven't already, into a breakthrough call. I would like to invite you to come and brainstorm with me, to allow me to be your think partner, even just for 40 minutes during our call. For those girls and guys that are in the Realign Your Communication program, I can't wait to get onto the coaching calls, and I welcome you to just jot down those instances where you've gone into overwhelm because you're doing your best to slow things down and form a logical consequence, but sometimes it's tough. In fact, it's always tough, especially if we've been triggered. So let me be there to help you. And then if any of you are wondering, this is an imprint of my dog Shanky's nose. And if you belong to the email subscription list, which I know most of you do, you'll see Shanky's words of wisdom. So you'll know who Shanky is at the bottom of the emails. She does have a couple of really good quotes to hand out. Anyway, I look forward to chatting to you girls in our next coaching session. And I hope this information has been valuable just to understand what consequences are. And then also remember, there are good consequences too. And embrace those, celebrate them, and make those count.